The automobile section of Economic Times, ET Auto, has been on an anti-EV tirade over the last 6 months. They have been publishing one negative article after another. Recently, I managed to stumble upon this magnum opus authored by one Mr. Suman Banerjee. The headline is typical of ET Auto when it comes to EVs: bombastic, high-sounding, but with little meaning. And also, most of Mr. Banerjee's EV articles have some clickbaity headlines with an anti-EV tone. Essentially, this article says that the Indian EV industry will not have large enough market and will collapse into a bubble very soon. I will go through the sections of the article and give you my take on this. At the start of the article, he says, and I quote, "Over the last 12 months, electric scooters have been a rage on Indian roads. Defying the pandemic in 2021, sales have more than doubled, over 2.3 lakh units. Startups have mushroomed, armed with a narrative to revolutionize the industry. It's a phenomenon fraught with many risks. A bubble similar to other industries in the past seems to be shaping up in the electric two-wheeler segment." I'll give my take based on some facts, okay? So here is the reality. The sales of pollution vehicles from big ICE OEMs are showing negative growth. Hero MotoCorp saw its sales plummet in the month of November 2021, okay? Honda reported a nearly 35% year-on-year decline in two-wheeler sales in November 2021. Bajaj Auto saw a dip of 23% in November sales. We can clearly see that the slowdown is broad and based across both scooters and motorcycles. One can blame the pandemic, but the reality is that all consumption trends in India have not only recovered but actually boomed in the festive season, except the pollution vehicle industry. You can blame the global chip shortage, but unlike cars, the demand for semiconductor chips is restricted only to a small segment, which is 150cc bikes. This segment only accounts for 15 to 20% of the overall market. EVs use more IC semiconductor chips than ICE two-wheelers and have had a fantastic 2021 in terms of growth. While ICE vehicle sales are slowing down, EVs are consistently growing 20-25% month over month. Yes, Mr. Banerjee is right. Our EV industry has defied the pandemic. For him, this growth in the EV industry is apparently a cause of concern. For me, this is a cause for celebration, as there is more fresh air in our cities and fewer oil imports for India. More EVs are a good thing. Only companies and people who have an agenda who can gain by selling pollution vehicles will tell you otherwise. Then the article goes on to say that there were peak sales of 21.2 million two-wheelers in FY 2018-2019 in India. The expected cumulative capacity of electric two-wheelers by 2026 is set to exceed 30 million units a year. Then he asks a question: would India need that much capacity by 2030? And then he answers his own question with an emphatic no. Essentially, the author is saying that two-wheeler numbers won't go up to 30 million units and there is no point for startups to invest in a large scale. According to me, the Indian two-wheeler EV industry needs to aim higher. I can tell you why 30 million units is not enough. The first reason, the ICE vehicle industry and its ecosystem are essentially a money-making machine with no regard for helping the common people of India. The pollution vehicles sold by these companies assume unsustainably high ownership of vehicles. Operating a pollution vehicle is a terribly expensive affair, with petrol prices rising to 110 rupees per litre. There is a huge population in India for whom buying and operating a vehicle is a luxury. We know many people who tell us that. They would like to buy a motorcycle or a scooter but are very scared of petrol and maintenance costs, and thus they end up not buying a vehicle, or they buy a pollution vehicle and use it sparingly. My friend, who's a carpenter, lives nearby and told me exactly this. He was so scared of using a motorcycle due to petrol costs that he used to walk a few days to save money. Don't these people also deserve the freedom and joy that a two-wheeler offers? Why should only a section of the population enjoy two-wheelers? Affordable electric scooters with insanely cheap running costs have already started helping such people. My friend got an electric scooter and he says that it has taken all the stress out of his day-to-day life. This is where the ICE two-wheeler industry is failing, and this is exactly the market EV manufacturers are thriving in. This, guys, is happening today. Go to small towns and see how people are ditching pollution vehicles, embracing EVs. I will link a Bloomberg article in this description which talks about this very phenomenon. As you can see, basic affordable electric two-wheelers are a huge untapped market in India, and this market itself can take the two-wheeler segment to more than 30 million units by 2030. Second reason is the author completely ignores the potential for export of Indian electric two-wheelers. Southeast Asia, Africa, Europe are heavy two-wheeler users, and the Indian EV industry can make EVs in India and export them abroad. Many of these countries are suffering from air pollution and waste huge money on oil imports. These countries won't buy pollution vehicles. All of them will demand EVs. If India can't supply EVs to them, China will. So once you consider the export potential of EVs, then the Indian EV industry can blow the 30 million unit mark easily. This will be a huge win for Make in India. Of course, the Economic Times won't tell you all of this because it won't suit the agenda. The author is not thinking about India's future, nor is he thinking about India's potential for growth. When I think about growth in the EV industry, there is so much to be optimistic about. But for people who hate EVs and make money from pollution vehicles, these articles are like manna from heaven. It seems to me that their main goal is to spread a false narrative about EVs. Then the article goes on to make another sweeping generalization. In a game of trying to garner crazy valuations, the propensity to exaggerate the potential over a squeezed timeline is obvious. The startup ecosystem does not necessarily look at long term, and investors are only eyeing at the shorter time frame for an exit. Hype is a necessity. So according to Mr. Banerjee, all Indian EV startups are here only to make a quick buck, and their main focus is to create hype and garner crazy valuations. This kind of generalization about the EV industry really pisses me off. I'll give you some examples here, okay? Consider a startup like Ather that has designed the electric scooter from the ground up. When most auto journalists used to laugh at EV two-wheelers, the Ather team showed them how EVs can easily outperform the best pollution vehicles on the market. The Ather team has spent years driven by a passion for innovation and the dream to make a world-class product in India, and they are investing huge money in commissioning a second plant to enhance their capacity to 4 lakh units per year. Yet the author of this article dismisses startups like Ather as only interested in crazy valuations. Consider the electric motorcycle startup Tork Motors. Here's a team that has been designing electric motorcycles since 2009. They have persisted through tough times in the pandemic with funding issues, and in 2022 they have launched their Tork Kratos electric motorcycle. They invested huge money to make all the components like the axial flux motor, controller and other components in-house and in India. So the author assumes that Tork Motors are in it only for the short term. Then why would they spend all that money, time, effort to localize all those components and make them in India? And why persist despite all those years of setbacks? Consider the kids at Earth Energy. Here's a very young startup that has spent more than 4 years working on its two-wheeler electric vehicles and is now releasing its vehicles in 2022 and has even signed up dealers all over India. The company has invested in the design, manufacturing of plastic molds, software, electronic components with the aim to create a highly localized made in India product. But the author assumes Earth Energy are in it only for a short term. Consider Ola Electric, the startup that has shaken the two-wheeler industry to the core with sales of at least 500 crores. If they meet their deliveries, they will soon become India's largest two-wheeler manufacturer. Recently, our government announced a production-linked scheme to manufacturing lithium-ion cells in India. Ola Electric is the only Indian auto company apart from Mahindra to invest and commit to battery cell manufacturing, and they will be investing hundreds of crores. This huge investment in cell manufacturing by Ola Electric is apparently not long-term enough for our author. I'll give you one final example. Consider a startup like Distrust, who have since the start focused on electric cargo two-wheelers. This startup has helped hundreds of businesses save lakhs of rupees transporting goods by using EVs. The companies are investing in localization, FAME to certification, setting up a new factory to cater to increased demand. And here we have our Economic Times author who has summarily dismissed startups like Express who are only doing good for India. I can give you 10 more examples of startups with incredible people in the EV industry who are looking to cause disruption and working towards a better India, unlike pollution vehicle manufacturers who are content with making the status quo and are causing harm to India. For the author, EV startups is equal to bad, pollution vehicle manufacturers is equal to good. It's very lazy journalism when Mr. Banerjee makes sweeping generalizations like this. I won't even call it journalism. It's essentially spreading FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt against the EV industry. While I agree that there's bound to be consolidation of these startups this decade, there's no denying the fact that well-funded startups like Ola, Ather can carve a niche for themselves and easily eat into the market share enjoyed by the likes of TVS, Hero, Bajaj, Honda, Piaggio, Suzuki, which have become fat and lazy over the years, gobbling up pollution vehicle revenue and are no longer capable of true innovation. The author also talks about the lack of electric motorcycle options in the two-wheeler market, which is dominated by motorcycles. While that is true now, the author does not realize that this can change during this decade. Affordable electric scooters will dominate the segment in small towns and cities for personal use. Cargo electric scooters will replace motorcycles that are used today for deliveries. Electric motorcycles will become a premium leisure-oriented vehicle. We will see electric motorcycles in the coming years, there's no doubt about it, but the impact won't be great as that of compared to electric scooters and cargo scooters. Ultimately, the author says the electric bandwagon would do well to adopt a measured tone. Here's the thing petrol heads don't understand. They think that EVs are just another segment in the vehicle industry like SUVs, hatchbacks, cargo vehicles, budget scooters. These people don't realize that in a matter of a decade, EVs will be the market, period. By the time this decade ends, most people will prefer EVs instead of pollution vehicles. An EV will last twice as long compared to an ICE vehicle. As years go on, it won't make any financial sense to get a pollution vehicle. And we have not even spoken about the most important reasons why we should hurry and make the transition to EVs: air pollution in our cities and climate change. Extracting, shipping, refining, transporting, burning oil in our cities are highly unsustainable practices. Pollution vehicles are destroying the health of people living in Indian cities. Moving to green transport, among other changes in the industry and society, is urgent and necessary. So yeah, Mr. Banerjee, EVs are not some bandwagon, they are a necessity, and we should do everything we can to accelerate their adoption and stop using pollution vehicles. Finally guys, I want to make a comment on the state of media today. I will share an article by Axios which has the title "Distrust in Political Media and Business Leaders Sweeps the Globe." Here are some points I wanted to highlight. People don't think that the media or business leaders are telling the truth. Journalists are considered the least trustworthy societal leaders according to Elderman's new 2022 Global Trust Barometer. Let me repeat that. Journalists are considered the least trustworthy societal leaders. A majority of people believe journalists, government leaders, business executives are purposely trying to mislead people by saying things they know that are false or gross exaggerations. Around the world, people fear that the media is becoming more sensational for commercial gain. There you have it, guys. If you look at ET Auto's website, every EV article has a sensational negative headline. I don't know what's happening here. Maybe they are funded by the fossil fuel industry or big ICE vehicle companies to ensure that they keep portraying EVs in a negative light. Or this is simply the internet's mysterious algorithm at work, forcing even respected newspapers and magazines to write sensational articles and use clickbaity headlines, all for views and money. The main intention, it would appear, is to set an anti-EV narrative. And the sad part is, most of the people just look at the headlines and don't read articles. The narrative is embedded in their minds without proper verification. This is another consequence of information overload in the digital age, and this is a dangerous thing. Nowadays, I have become skeptical of everything. I will never trust any business leader, corporation, or media source. This is applicable to the EV industry and EV leaders as well, not just oil companies and ICE vehicle manufacturers. For example, if Bhavesh Agarwal from Ulva Electric says something, I won't believe him. Similarly, if Rahul Bajaj from Bajaj says something publicly, I won't believe him. What I will do is use my sources, get real information, and then make my own opinion. Remember, no business CEO or media organization is looking out for you. What business leaders or media leaders have your concerns in mind? Do they care about India's well-being? No. They care about paying less to their workers and slaving away for their paymasters. If this means pushing smear campaigns against any industry that is causing disruption, then so be it. Trying to portray EVs in the EV industry in the most negative light possible because you personally don't like EVs is the norm now. EV haters are using the influence in mainstream media to set a narrative in people's mind. This is against the tenets of honest journalism, so the distrust of mainstream media is absolutely warranted, and all of you should distrust these people. Independent media, which PluginIndia is part of, also has its issues. For every honest channel out there are hundreds of dishonest charlatans pushing a bogus narrative and raking in the views. People don't trust new media as well, and they are not wrong to do so. So ultimately, I encourage you to do your own research, gather data, come to your own conclusions. Don't share an article the moment you read it. Take 15-20 minutes to cross-verify it online. If that sounds too hard, then remember that hard things are often worth doing. If you share an unverified article or WhatsApp forwards, you are part of the problem. And as for such articles of Economic Times or ET Auto, don't share them at all. The fewer views for them, the better. I will see you next time in the next episode of PluginIndia Musings. Take care, guys.